downloaded a sleep analysis app. I don't know if I'll sleep again after what I heard. Let me begin this by saying, I haven't been able to get any meaningful sleep in 2 days, so the exact details are a little fuzzy. For the last month, I've been using a sleep tracking app to help me fix my sleep schedule, which was screwed during the early part of my winter break. My goal with the app was to get it back on track by the time the new semester started. The app worked like a charm, as it would log any time that I would make noise while sleeping. This would allow me to then listen to noises I made throughout the night and delete it if it wasn't of concern the following day. During the waning days of break, I got asked by my grandparents to house sit their house in the suburbs for 5 days whilst they were on a European cruise, offering me $100 per day. My only responsibility whilst house sitting was to water their plants and make sure the place wasn't robbed. Other than that, I was free to do whatever I was pleased with. On my first night there, I planned on inviting 10 or so friends over to have a small party. When I was younger and spent time at their house, I always believed it was haunted. However, as I grew older, that fear had all but dissipated. My mum tried convincing younger me that she had used a Ouija board in the house with her friends and summoned a spirit. Since then, whenever I was in the basement, younger me always swore he had seen shadows of someone moving around, despite being the only person down there. As I grew older, however, I had written it off as paranoia. When I arrived at the house, my grandparents had already left for their cruise. I entered through the garage using the code. The house was 2 stories with a finished basement, and on the second floor there were 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, while the first floor had a bedroom and a bathroom on it. When someone entered the front door, they'd be greeted by an entry hall with an L-shaped stairs leading to the second floor. Once I got inside, I went up to the guest room and placed my bags on the bed. The guest room was immediately to the left of the stairs once you reached the top. After unpacking my bags and making myself comfortable in my new room, I ran to the corner store down the block and picked up some snacks for the party that night. I then decided to head downstairs, where they kept the liquor for parties, to see what drinks I'd be able to sneak off with for my friends. When I went downstairs, I got scared by a ghoul decoration between the fridge and stairs, its head turned towards the fridge. My grandparents must have bought it for the most recent Halloween, explaining why I had never seen it. After jumping slightly at the sight of the ghoul, I grabbed some bottles of liquor from the cabinets and went upstairs to prepare. After a few hours of prepping the house for my friends, I unlocked the door and they trickled in. I won't bore you with the details, but everyone had a good time, and they had left by around 1 in the morning. I went back to the guest room and began running the app. I was able to sleep through the first night before waking up at around noon. After going around the house watering all my grandmother's plants, I checked my phone and went through all the entries. Everything seemed normal until one entry at 3 in the morning. As I played it, curious about what sounds I may have made, I realised the noises were not coming from me, but were footsteps outside of my bedroom door. They made their way downstairs before the audio recording had finished. Out of curiosity, I went and messaged everyone who had attended the party the previous night, asking if anyone had left later than I thought. To my relief, my friend, let's call him Sam, had responded that he went to lay down at around midnight, waking up and leaving at 3, not wanting to wake me. I breathed a sigh of relief going and checking the door, seeing that it was for sure unlocked for when he had left. I quickly locked the door and returned to my room to check the rest of the audio logs. At around 4:30 in the morning, there was another logged noise. As I played it, I realised that it was also footsteps outside of my bedroom door. I, however, chalked it up to my nerves getting the better of me and Sam forgetting what time he had truly left the house. The second day was uneventful. Having already watered all the plants, I simply spent the day sitting in front of the TV, switching between watching YouTube and horror movies. At one point, I did have to go down to the basement to grab myself a frozen pizza, and when I went downstairs, I noticed that the ghoul's head was now turned to face the stairs. At first, it gave me the chills seeing that the head had moved. However, I assumed that someone from the party had gone in the basement and messed up with the ghoul. I shrugged off the feeling of unease and walked past it to grab the pizza before heading upstairs. At around 9, I had drifted off whilst watching a slasher movie, being awakened by a scream about half an hour later. Realising just how tired I was, I turned off the TV and headed upstairs, and once I got into bed, I turned on the sleep tracker. I slept comfortably for a second night in a row before waking up at 10 in the morning. I went through my sleep logs once again. This time, I saw a log at 2:15. However, when I clicked on it, I only heard breathing. However, 30 seconds into the video, I heard what I swore was a door slamming shut on the first floor. I went downstairs cautiously for 2 reasons: to ensure that the doors were still locked, and to hopefully pinpoint which door made that noise. When I got down to the first floor, the front and back door were locked, along with the garage being closed. Every door on the first floor was open, except for 2 closet doors, and the door leading down into the basement. I worked up the courage to open the door leading into the basement. As I walked down the stairs, I was met by the ghoul decoration at the landing. I jumped, tripping as I sprinted up the stairs and slammed the basement doors shut. I didn't want to overreact. However, I wanted to make sure the house didn't have an intruder hiding inside waiting for me. I went to my car and called Sam to come over. In half an hour, he had come over. He and I did a complete sweep of the first and second floor initially, seeing as those were the areas where I planned on staying for the final 2 days. During the sweep, I asked him if he knew about anyone turning the ghoul's head during the party. He turned to me and said, "No one went into the basement that night. We had assumed you locked the door." That response sent a shiver down my spine. I asked him, "You're messing with me, right? The door doesn't lock." He shook his head before continuing the search. After searching every inch of the 2 floors, a sense of dread overwhelmed me. Well, I guess it's time to look into the basement. I seemed to choke on my words. The last thing I wanted to do was be face to face with the ghoul again. I opened the door and led Sam into the basement, showing him how I was greeted by the ghoul. Now that I had Sam with me, I seemingly regained some of my courage. I picked up the ghoul decoration and moved it back into the corner it was initially in, making sure to catch the light switch to turn on the basement lights. As we searched along the basement, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. Everything seemingly was going well until Sam gasped, swearing he saw a shadow in the back of the basement. We went over to inspect the back wall of the basement, and after a few minutes we satisfied ourselves that no one was down there. We turned off the lights and quickly made our way back to the first floor. Once we got upstairs, we closed the door and put a chair in front of it just to be safe. I swear I saw something move down there. Sam pleaded, begging me to believe him. "I know. I swore I've seen the shadow of someone move down there too," I reassured him. I decided to order him dinner to repay the favour. I ordered wings, and while he drank beer with his dinner, I stuck to soda, not wanting to be intoxicated if something sinister was truly happening. Once Sam had left, I made sure that all the lights were on. I know it seems childish, but it was the only way to feel safe sleeping in the house. I had to forgo my normal routine of watching horror movies and stuck to comedic movies that night, thinking maybe I had scared myself into believing all the weird happenings, when in reality, everything could be explained away. After an hour, I made my way to bed The house bathed in light. I closed my door. Even though the light was on in my room, I saw it as a barrier between me and whatever was lurking through the house at night. Even with the door shut, I could see under the door that the light in the hallway was brighter as it was streaming into the room. As I lay in bed, sleep could not come to me. I am not sure whether it was because of the light or my own fear. Eventually, I must have drifted off for a few moments, as I awoke to it still being dark outside. I checked my phone, and the time read 1:49 AM. I didn't have the sleep detector running, so I wasn't able to check if any strange noises were recorded whilst I was asleep. However, the lack of recording was the least of my worries. After a few minutes of lying in bed scrolling through social media, I heard what sounded like footsteps. They began in the entry hallway, eventually working their way towards the stairs. I lay there in silence, not knowing what to do. This was the first time I was conscious when whatever was making the noises was active. As I lay there, the stairs began to creak. Whatever or whoever was climbing them was slowly going up each stair. After the 14th step, they had reached the top. I held my breath in anticipation, not knowing what would happen if they decided to open my door. I noticed a shadow block out the light that was sneaking its way under my door. This triggered my fight or flight response, and seeing as there was nowhere for me to run, I began shouting, "What do you want? I have a gun, so don't you even think about opening the door." No response came from the other side, but after a few moments the shadow that obstructed the light from entering through the crack in the door was gone. I thought that was strange as I hadn't heard any footsteps leave. After that, I couldn't lay in bed anymore. I sat up and scrolled on my phone, hoping it would keep my mind occupied from the close call of the person on the other side of the door. After hours of keeping myself occupied, the sun began to shine through my windows, and I was able to convince myself that what I saw wasn't real. I was just sleep deprived, I told myself. When people aren't sleeping properly, they hear auditory hallucinations and see shadows that often, right? That was a good enough explanation for me. Plus, I only needed to last 2 more days before I would be able to go home and sleep in my own bed. I decided that the best way to keep myself safe would be to stay awake for the next 2 days. Even though I was able to convince myself that what was happening wasn't real, I didn't want to risk catching something through the sleep tracking app that would just make my fears worse. I went through the rest of the day on autopilot, drinking massive amounts of caffeine in an attempt to keep myself awake. I also went down into the living room and began watching some more television. That would keep me awake. By 10 PM though, I felt myself begin to drift off to sleep. I thought, what harm could happen sleeping on the couch with all the lights on, especially if I limited to only an hour. Most of the occurrences were only happening in the early hours of the morning, so if I woke up before midnight, I'd be fine. I set multiple alarms, all of which were 5-minute increments between 11 and 12 AM. I then spent some time debating whether I should use the sleep tracking app or not. On one hand, it could be useful for a couple of reasons, to either document in case something was to happen to me, or to help myself be aware of what was happening near me whilst in a land of unconsciousness. On the other hand, however, that app has done nothing but promote fear for me. I decided that the 2 pros outweighed the 1 con, especially in the case that something sinister was truly happening. And with that, I turned on the sleep tracking app and was able to fall asleep sitting up on the couch. When I woke up, my 11:25 alarm was going off, meaning I had slept through 5 alarms. As I awoke though, I noticed that the lights in the adjacent rooms had all gone off, leaving my only light source as a lamp on a table beside the couch and the TV. I assumed at first that the lights must have all just burnt out, as I had never seen my grandparents replace any of them, and they were all installed at around the same time. I don't know what made me do it, but out of morbid curiosity I checked the sleep tracking app, and sure enough there were 3 entries. I started with the most recent one, which occurred at 11:24. When I played the noise, I quickly recognised it as me simply shuffling about on the couch right before I woke up. I sighed in relief again as I realised that meant I wasn't in immediate danger. I don't know what compelled me to check on the other 2 logs, and I don't know if what happened next would have happened if I hadn't, but I clicked on the first recorded sound at 10:19. The sound that was recorded almost sounded like wind or someone shushing. It was eerie, however I was able to convince myself that it was me making the sound. Looking back, I wish I hadn't clicked on the second one because I can never forget what I heard. The log said the sound occurred at 11:02, and when I first clicked on it, I heard a calming, feminine voice begin by saying, "What do I want?" over and over again for 20 seconds. That was enough to freak me out. But just as I was about to turn off the app, the voice changed from a calming female voice to a raspy deep one responding with a shout, "I want you." After hearing that voice, I closed the app and shot up to grab my keys. I didn't care about the money anymore. All I cared about was leaving the house safely. I ran into the kitchen to grab my keys, but something made me stop in my tracks. I heard footsteps coming from upstairs. However, instead of the slow, methodical steps I had heard the previous night, they were more hurried. They made their way to the stairs and began descending them. This cut off my exit from the front door, leaving me with 2 options: the back door or the garage. I decided to go out of the garage, as all I would have to do is open it and get into my car. I sprinted to the garage and slammed on the opener as hard as I could. The garage could not open fast enough. When the garage had finally opened, I sprinted to my car and put the key in the ignition. I didn't care about the bags I was leaving upstairs, if it meant I was leaving with the most valuable possession, my life. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw a figure in the guest room overlooking the driveway. It appeared to be glaring down at me. I'm writing this in a hotel about 10 minutes away, too exhausted to drive the 2 hours back home tonight. I look forward to getting a good night's sleep finally. I use the app to make sure I'm safe, and I'll update everyone with what happens. Update 1. 2 days have passed, and my grandparents are back home from their cruise. I'm heading to the house to meet them and grab my stuff. I'm not going to tell them about what happened, as I don't want them to think I'm insane, or worse, scare them out of the house. Clearly whatever's there hasn't harmed them. During the 2 nights I spent at the hotel, I used the sleep tracker app, and nothing out of the ordinary occurred other than my snoring. I just grabbed my stuff, and despite staying at a hotel for the final 2 nights, they paid me all $500 promised to me. Whilst I was at the house, nothing unusual happened. No footsteps occurred in areas where nothing's supposed to. So, I'll begin the drive home and update everyone when I get there. Update 2. I've made it home, and I'm ready to pass out in my own bed. Maybe everything was just in my head. Clearly, they haven't been bothered by strange occurrences in their own house. It's possible I had too much to drink that first night, and from there, everything spiraled. This should be the last update I leave you guys, as I don't foresee anything happening anymore. Update 3. I was wrong. The first week at home was fine, but the last 2 days I've heard strange things on the sleep tracker. 2 nights ago, I heard footsteps again come from outside my room. That wouldn't be alarming if I didn't live alone. I called the police and they searched my house, but they found nothing. They told me to call them if anything else happens. Last night, I had another strange log. When I played it, I heard the shushing noise again before the raspy voice began speaking. It told me, "You thought you were free from me. Next time you fall asleep, you're mine." I don't know what to do. I'm exhausted and feel my eyes starting to close. Maybe after posting this update, I'll take a quick nap.